Hello everyone, this is Aditya, and today we are going to discuss that why in case of aeroplanes you need to have so long run up before you take off. Well, it's an interesting topic, so I thought to make a video on it, and of course I will also discuss that what will happen if you don't take the required run up. So let's start with the video, but before that please do like, share, subscribe my channel and please support this video. Now let's start. So as I discussed in one of my previous videos regarding how an aeroplane flies, so in that I discussed that the basic principle required to lift an aeroplane is basically the pressure difference, right? So pressure difference, how we are getting that? It is using the velocity of the plane and area of the wing, and of course density of air is really important, right? So basically the lifting is proportional to, we will discuss it in some time. So if you want to know more about it, then please do check out my that video regarding how an airplane flies. In that I have not discussed any kind of maths, just the basic concept that how an aeroplane actually lifts. So I've put the link in description so you can check it out. Now let's move forward, right? So basically when we think that what is the requirement of run-up, then it's like many people think it's obvious, but many still think that why. So if we think from the perspective of physics, and that is the actual reason only. So if we think from the perspective of physics, then it is very clear. What is it? Since we know that lift is proportional to what? The density of air, the velocity of airplane squared, and the area of wing, right? Okay. So these three are the major factors which are required to lift the plane, right? So basically area of the wing is of course fixed, you can't change it. Of course there are now adjustable wings also, but we are not talking about that. We're just thinking that if the wings are kept of same size, then what are the two factors? It is the density of air and the velocity of airplane, right? Okay. So to attain that required lift, you need to acquire that much velocity also. Of course, since the density of air we are assuming to be constant, of course it's constant only. Of course, according to given weather conditions, it will be constant, right? We're not talking about like in winters it's more dense and in summers it is less dense. No, we are not talking about that. We are talking about a particular weather condition, right? So in that case, it is basically proportional to the velocity squared, right? So to attain that velocity, a run-up is required. So that is why run-up is really important. So in that whole phase, the airplane is accelerating. So that is why its velocity is increasing at every second, every millisecond it is increasing. So due to which, what is happening is that lifting is becoming easier, right? So of course you have to overcome the weight of the airplane to fly, of course, right? So that is why if you don't attain that much lift, you won't be able to fly. That is as simple as that. Okay. So basically to lift, it is compulsory, it is the requirement, it is the necessity to have that much amount of velocity. That is why to attain that velocity, of course you can't accelerate in a small region, right? Of course you need to have long run up for that, right? That is why generally it is like I don't remember the exact value, but it is something like that. Many are like many kilometers, and some are like 2-3 kilometers also. The run up, and it depends upon the plane also, right? If it is like a big plane, so in that case we require more velocity, and if it is a smaller plane, so in that case we don't require that much velocity. Of course, you require high velocity, but not that much, right? So it depends upon the weight of the plane also, right? That you have to overcome, right? Of course, in the formula of lifting, you don't have a weight term, but to lift that, you need to overcome the weight also, right? So due to which, to overcome that weight, you need to have that much amount of velocity, right? Correct? So that is why this much amount of run up is necessary, right? Okay. So what will happen if you don't get that much amount of velocity? Well, in that case, the plane won't be able to lift properly, and even if it lifts, it won't be able to fly properly, leading to many crashes, right? So it is really important for flying that you attain that velocity, then only it is possible to take off, right? And secondly, uh, it depends upon the weather condition also. And if I talk specifically, I'll be talking related to formula only, that it is dependent on the density of air. So in case of summers, many say that it is difficult for the plane to take off, and in winters it is relatively easier. Why? Because we know that lifting is proportional to the density of air, right? So in case of summers, of course it's hot, so that is why the molecules are scattered. So if molecules are scattered per unit volume, so in that case the density is of course low. So if density is low, then that case lift will also be low. So to get that much amount of lift, you will have to give higher velocity, right, to acquire that much lift, right? Since lift is proportional to rho into v square into area of the wing, right? So area of the wing is constant, so that is why we have rho v square is equal to lift. Basically proportionality, rho v square is proportional to lift, right? So we need to increase the velocity in that case if the density is low, and if density is relatively high, then you can give slightly less velocity, then also you will produce same lift, right? So that is why it is easier to fly in winters compared to in summers. But of course we have very powerful engines now, so that is not a big issue now, but still it's an issue, right? So that is a weather condition really important during takeoff, right? Of course I'm not dealing about turbulence and other factors. This is basically what I'm talking about, the takeoff and the run up problem, right? Basically you know that what will happen if you don't take run up, will lead to crashes, right? And many, so if you don't give that much amount of velocity that is the required run up, so in that case there's a high chance of crashing of an airplane and many other things, right? So that is why run up is really important, right? But in case of helicopters, you don't need a run up, right? So is it better? Of course. If you use helicopter wings, that is helicopter rotors, in place of propellers, in case of airplane, so what will happen? Well, if you use rotors in airplane also, then what will happen is that they cause lots of turbulence, right? Especially when it flies over water bodies, right? So of course it is not a good method to travel, right? So that is why. And there are many other factors also. I won't discuss that right now because that is not a topic of this video, but of course I'll make a video on it also. So basically there are many other factors. It was just one of the basic factors which I said. And yeah, so that's it for the video. If you did enjoy this video, then please do like, share, subscribe my channel. Bye.